Hey everybody, welcome to a new chapter of Old Man Brad. Whether you are new to the show or returning for another episode, I'm so happy that you're giving me a listen. And if you love the show, just drop me a review over on your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, wherever you listen to the show. I would love to hear what you think. So this week, I'm doing a brand new Shudder film, but I'm not doing it alone. Bring one of my good friends in to talk You'll Never Find Me. I'm welcoming Gerald from Two Peas on a Podcast. How you doing, Gerald?
Bradley, I found you.
You did find me.
I wasn't never find me, but I found you. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's been a while since we've gotten together and done anything.
I know, man. It's a bummer. I wish we could record more often, but we're talking all the time. You and I talk daily, text each other, talking
all
shit.
that content that we used to do for Apple TV Plus.
I know.
It kept us busy.
Don't tease the people too much with that. They hear that, they might start checking the Apple TV feed.
They were like, "What? A new Apple TV?" This movie, You'll Never Find Me. We were trying to figure out a movie that we could do, because you just went and saw Immaculate, which I want to see.
Yeah, man.
I haven't seen it yet, and I was like, I want to record something with you. You're like, what about this Shudder movie? I was like, I haven't watched it yet. So we both watched You'll Never Find Me. Before we roll into the movie, I just want to tell everybody out in Cincinnati, come out to the Esquire Theater for Frightful Fridays. We do it on the third Friday of the month. And for April, I am hosting a screening of Brain Scan from 1994, starring Edward Furlong. It's his 30th anniversary. I'm excited for it. But come out to the Esquire, April 19th, 10 p.m. Let's watch a movie together. Okay, let's move into You'll Never Find Me.
I'm sorry. The weather has gone crazy out there. Is it okay if I use your phone?
I have to admit, this thunderstorm is strange. What made you come here?
I don't know, I just ran. I'd really need a lift into town.
I'll take you there when the weather lets up.
Do you get lonely all the way out here? Hiding,
Hiding?
or I'll just start running something.
You've never been here before? You have a familiar face.
That should probably get out of your way.
I don't think he can. I'm just messing with you. Did you tell someone you were coming here? What are you actually doing here tonight?
Patrick, a strange and lonely resident, lives in a mobile home at the back of an isolated trailer park. After a violent storm, a mysterious young woman appears at his door, seeking shelter from the elements. This is directed by Josiah Allen and Indiana Bell. Also written by Indiana Bell. It stars Brendan Rock and Jordan Cowan. I'm just going to come out and say, Gerald, this was quite a movie. I'm sure we're going to have some thoughts. There's some questions I have about this film.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say right up front, we will get into spoilers. I guarantee it, because I want to talk about the ending. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it and come back and listen. We'll keep it a little spoiler-free here a little bit at the beginning and then kind of go into it. Overall, what did you think of You'll Never Find Me?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the spoiler thing, because people say it all the time, but I feel like this is one of the movies that you could only talk about for like 90 seconds before you had to get into spoilers. But just to keep it super generic, I liked it a lot. I have some issues with the last act of the film, and again, we'll talk about that whenever the spoiler section comes up. But overall, I found the kind of creepy atmosphere and just kind of the mystique and mystery around both of the main characters. I thought the script and the filmmakers did a good job of kind of keeping you guessing as the audience as to who was a good guy, who was a bad guy, what was the dynamic. There's just different things employed throughout the movie that keep recurring that are going to come back somehow and have something to do with it. But they do a good job of kind of keeping you guessing until that final act. And like I said, we'll talk about that when we get there. But overall, I quite enjoyed this, to be honest.
Same. I quite enjoyed it as well. And like you said, it does make you guess back and forth of, what are the intentions of each of these two people? What is going on here? They lead you one way and then pull the rug out and lead you another way. And that's what I loved about it. The ending, you're right. To me, it just kind of felt like rushed in really quickly. Mm-hmm. It didn't. You got this build up, but then, all right, here's your ending. Oh, it's over.
Right, sure.
I will say that this movie was shot phenomenally.
It was really good. High quality.
I thought it was shot very well. It was lit well. The sound design was awesome. All the little nuances that you throughout the movie. And overall, I loved it. I thought it was great. Much better than I anticipated. Sometimes on Shudder, you're just like, you don't know what kind of movie you're going to get on Shudder. It could be good, it could be bad.
Right. Well, it's interesting because that you mentioned that part before we get into spoilers and stuff, because I had to watch this pretty late last night. So whenever my kids are asleep or my wife's trying to put them to sleep, I'll put in my earbuds.
Yeah.
And Bluetooth connect them to my TV. And I did that for the majority of this movie. And the sound design, like you said, is really phenomenal. Like, it's really, really a character in this movie. Like, the rainstorm, the lightning crashes, the thunder, how it'll kind of, correspond with some of the bigger moments in the film, I thought was a cliche, but it was like expertly kind of intertwined with the story here. So really, really good sound design. The
way the lightning strikes too, especially when it got dark and it would just like the back part of the trailer would light up, but not so much the front one. And then I don't know, it was definitely crafted well. I'm sure that there was a lot of planning to make sure when they edited this together that everything just kind of fell into place. As we're going through this movie, it starts off with this man who's alone in his trailer, and then all of a sudden you get this banging on the door. It's like a big, huge go, 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 go. Right, and the first thing that pops in my head is obviously The Strangers is coming, and you think of The Strangers as like...
I thought of The Strangers almost immediately too, and kind of honestly like the bleak kind of colors and like atmosphere of the movie were all, you could tell, were kind of inspired by The Strangers and just generally by like home invasion films. I felt like
he's basically telling her, whoever's at the door, fuck off. I don't want to answer it. And then when he does, you can't really hear her audio very well. Like, it's very muffled and quiet. Like she's behind something. And then it's this, strange woman at his door with no shoes on, completely rain drenched. He brings her in, and then it's kind of like, I don't want to say a cat and mouse game, but a little bit of they're kind of feeling each other out of what is this woman's intentions? What are his intentions? And you kind of like, okay, is this woman here for something else? Is he going to do something there? Like, you just don't know. And that's what I loved throughout this movie.
I agree. Are we into spoilers?
Yeah, let's just say spoilers are going to happen. You eventually find out some things, but then I still have a lot of questions.
So since we're okay to talk about whatever, I agree with everything you said. And to kind of like drill it down even more specifically, like when she is at the door there, she gets in the home. The movie was brilliant because for probably 2/3 of this film, I was kind of on Patrick's side. Like, I kind of felt like he was a good dude.
Yeah.
And I felt like she was kind of overreacting, and
she was putting him on trial, basically.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I don't know if overreacting is the right word, because I mean, that's probably a scary situation for like a young girl to be in with a stranger. But assuming that everything that we were watching was playing out in real time, which of course we find out other things, but assuming that it was what it was, literally, I kind of felt like he was just a genuine lonely dude who had not had a lot of interaction and just kind of wanted to help her with her dilemma. So what makes that interesting is as we get further and further along in the film, to your point, is the filmmakers do this weird thing where they show the flashback, right, of somebody in a car in the rain during the day.
Yeah.
And they continually show that. In fact, that might be the first frame of the movie too, I think, or early on in the movie. And they keep kind of showing it throughout the film until we learn how that kind of ties in. And then they also do this thing where both of the main characters are always looking at the roof of the mobile home.
And there's always like, it almost sounds like
somebody's crawling on it or something.
Crawling, someone's walking, some noise, almost like, is it a creature? Is it someone up there?
Right.
You just don't know.
So what I was going to tell you, so when I saw that was a recurring thing and not just like a one-time thing, and it was kind of trying to like take our attention off the characters and show us something else was going on, that's when I kind of decided, okay, this is not a legitimate literal interaction between two people. Like something's off here. Somebody's dreaming or somebody's not real or like, what, you know what I mean?
You would even get like voices in the background, like muffled voices, and then the radio that kept like playing music. And
it played Sleepwalk, by the way. I don't know if you know that song. It's an old like 40s or 50s tune called Sleepwalking. And so that was also kind of like, why did they choose Sleepwalking as the song, you know? So I don't know. I kind of thought there was some dreaming going on or in one of the characters' heads or, you know, something like that, which of course, and I don't know if you ever saw Identity. Did you ever see that movie with John Cusack?
Yes, it's been a long time, but yeah, I have.
And I love that movie. A lot of people hate on that movie. It doesn't have a very good Rotten Tomatoes score, but I really like that movie. And that was a psychological, kind of like the main character was thinking a lot of the stuff that we were seeing, kind of like an unreliable narrator type deal. So I kind of thought about that movie a little bit too. Plus you have the rain at night and all that stuff, which is similar to Identity as well. It's just in a hotel.
And I didn't know throughout, like, when you get all this stuff, and especially like her story kind of started to slip up. Like he was like, well, you said this. I thought this was what, like, you came from the beach, and she mentioned she came from a bar. I was like, is there something more supernatural involved here?
Right.
Is this, I mean, a much darker story that we don't know gonna happen? I didn't know if like some creatures are gonna come out. What kind of movie are we gonna end up getting here? Besides just two people interacting.
Yeah, and it was probably around the halfway point where I was kind of like, all right, this is much more than just a two-person, single location. There's some supernatural extracurricular stuff going on here. And of course, that ended up being true. I don't know how much you want to fast forward, but when we get to the last act of the film, the answers are kind of given to us, for lack of a better way to put that. That's when it kind of lost me. I know. Well, I have I guess let me hear your interpretation, because I think I know what I saw. I'm also talking about aesthetically too. Like, I just didn't like because it's a very quiet, atmospheric, performance-driven movie that is creepy and is scary and definitely mysterious. But then for like 10 minutes, it's this like chaotic, like kaleidoscope of like lights and loud noises, and there was weird music playing, and like, it just felt like a different movie for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then it kind of goes back to, I was okay with the very end. Like, I like the way it ended, like at the very end. But just that weird sequence with all the flashing lights and the cops at the door and all that stuff, it didn't fit for me.
There definitely was. It definitely switched gears when he goes outside and then she sees this, which I thought this scene where the phone started ringing and you just see the light up down the hallway, and then it just lights up in her eye as she's like,
yeah, I thought that was cool too.
I was like, this is sweet. She went and found a phone and then finds a dead body, and you're like, oh shit, now the shit's hit the fan. This dude's not a good guy, and he's chasing her. But then there's all this back and forth of like the hammer that's bloody but then not bloody, and then the music plays again, and like you said, there's the lights and banging, and it just got like sensory overload, I guess you could say.
Which was the exact opposite of the feel of the first 2/3 of the movie. Like, it was so different than the vibe leading up to that, which is what I was digging pretty hard. And I liked kind of the whodunit, mystery of it all, and like you said, a cat and mouse kind of thing. But that was just like out of left field. I'm not saying I hated it, but it was just so different from everything else. It was like a complete one-off scene.
My big question that I want to know is, we get to this ending. Do you think are they in this location with this happening? Which it very much leads to no. Is he in the car and she's the woman that comes to the window, kind of like he's on death's door or something, and now we're inside his head, kind of like what's the Charlie Kaufman movie that came out a couple years ago,
the one with Jesse Buckley?
Yes.
I can't remember the name. I know what you're talking about though. So here's what I think. Okay. So that's interesting actually, and you kind of made me scratch my head there for a second, because I'm like, shit, Brad, I figured it out. Now you threw me a curveball. So I think and she doesn't have a name. She's just referred to as the visitor. But I think the
Correct.
young lady, the visitor, is his first victim. The first girl that he ever killed, however many years ago. And he's remembering back to the moment when she approached his car and asked him for a ride. And that was how she got him back to her, or to his trailer. and killed her. He killed her with the hammer, which is why we see the hammer. We see the bludgeoning of her skull
Her head,
when we see her later, and that she's essentially a ghost haunting him for the most part. And then all these other women that he's allegedly killed, there's like 20 of them in his trailer. My assumption is that he's been doing it for a number of years and been kind of addicted to it because of that first one. And he makes comments about not remembering their face, but remembering specific things about them. And he mentioned a tattoo on her rib cage, and she has that tattoo. You noticed that part, right?
Yep.
So that's her. That's his first victim. So my interpretation is that it's all in his head. He is at his trailer, but he's either asleep or passed out or hallucinating or whatever, and kind of having this nightmare thing unfold. And then when he wakes up, it wasn't even raining. It's like he's still in his trailer, but it's a completely different day. Like it's the kids come to the door again, which is something that he had mentioned several times. And in the kind of hallucination or whatever he was having, the ghost of the visitor and the other women kind of forced him to drink the poison, essentially killing himself. And he goes back into the trailer at the very end and dies. We hear his body kind of hit the floor. At least I did, because I had my headphones on. But the sound design, again, was terrific, because you don't see him die. You just kind of hear it, and get the assumption. That's how I interpret this. What are your thoughts on that take?
And honestly, it makes sense, because I think I was looking at it in a different way. Yes, this wasn't his mind, but it kind of felt almost like this is his last, days. This is towards the end. And he makes a comment at one point about knowing God, and if you don't have the voices in your head, then something about like there is no God or something like that. And I was interpreting it as these are all the voices and people inside his head, and that's why he's killing them, to get rid of the voices so that there's nothing in his mind anymore and he's at peace.
And that could be. I mean, he does make a bit of exposition towards the end too.
Yeah.
When he's like dragging her across the trailer, but he's kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically, saying how after he did it a couple of times, he couldn't stop doing it. And he just wants the cops to show up to stop him, basically, because he knows he's not going to be able to stop himself. And then we see those images, again, I think it's in his mind or having a nightmare or whatever, but we see those images of a lot of different women. There's one standing in his bathtub when he passes by the doorway. He has to go through a crowd of them to get out the front door. Like, they're all over his trailer, and they all have like a tarp on them or like blood or whatever, which would indicate that they had been, killed or whatever.
Yeah.
So my interpretation, those were all his victims kind of haunting him. And in his hauntings, supernatural haunting or whatever, they decided to get him or trick him to drink the same thing that he killed them with. And then he died.
Makes sense. And I was going the route of like, these were just people he knew, and he's trying to kill everyone to clear his mind as he dies.
Which I don't know. I've never watched any. I mean, I just saw this and just heard about it a couple days ago. So I haven't read any reviews or seen any interviews with the writers or anything. So I don't really, that's just my interpretation. But I did have to sit there afterwards and kind of like think about it while the credits were rolling.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then the credits hit and it's just silence.
Yeah. With a very minimalistic title card, like nothing, crazy.
It's like it all just went silent. I don't know. It could kind of be a combination of both, of like, he's trying to silence the voices in his head. They're ghosts. They're his victims, his whatnot. But it can be interpreted in multiple ways, I think.
I agree.
Which, have you ever seen the movie Stay? It's very, spoilers if you haven't seen Stay, very much that these characters are coming into his life, and then you come to find out he was in a car accident, and these are all the people at the scene around him.
Okay. Yeah, another thing that this movie did that kind of led me to that conclusion as well is there, and I don't remember the exact dialogue, but there were things that she said that he said later, or vice versa. So did you catch that? It happened like 2 or 3 times where they were like repeating the same dialogue that we heard the other character say earlier in the movie.
I think there was the bar comment about kind of like women all looking the same, is what she said.
Yeah. And then he like says it later and she's like, I think you're the one that said that, or the other way around. I can't remember.
And I think same with like the chips, the bags of chips.
Yeah, it happens a couple times, which is another thing that led me to believe, oh, well, this is in his head because, his memories are kind of repeating or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's kind of losing sight of the details of the story in his mind, So really like this movie. If you take out that like really chaotic, hectic rave sequence for like 10 minutes.
It was loud. I mean, especially when they're banging on the door, it kept going. It's like, do. And I'm like, enough.
Even if you had that stuff incorporated in there, but it was like on the same thematic plane as the rest of the movie, I would have been even okay with it. But it was just so aesthetically different that it kind of took me out of it for like 10 minutes. Overall, I did really enjoy this thing.
Which I get, because you're leading up to this, and then it's just the chaos of everything hitting him all at once, and then it goes quiet. It worked. I did thoroughly enjoy this movie. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think I'm sitting around a 4 out of 5.
Same here. I was going to say 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10. I mean, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a really good independent, low budget horror movie. One location. I mean, for the most part.
One location and a rainy car.
Exactly. 2 actors. I mean, there's a couple extras in there or whatever, the dead girl. But I mean, essentially 2 leads. And I thought they were both really, really good in this. I had never seen either of them. And I thought they both looked like seasoned actors that were just kind of playing off each other. And it also, another thing too, is I was really like invested almost immediately. Like in the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I can't stop. Because sometimes late at night, I'll finish it the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's streaming. But like I couldn't. Like I was like, I got to see this to the end.
I got to know what this ending is.
I got to see what's going on here with this dude. But as the dialogue between the two was unfolding, like maybe in the first half hour, I wanted to ask you, because that was when it kind of clicked for me that this isn't a real thing that we're watching in real time. But the dialogue between them started to feel more and more like unbelievable, like not the way you would really talk to somebody. Does that make sense? Like he was almost like reciting poetry almost. Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain what I'm saying, but like he wasn't having like a normal conversation. And then she was just appeared to be scared out of her mind. So she was just kind of probably saying whatever she thought he wanted him to say.
I agree with you there. And then the more I think about it, I think his victim's kind of way of things, because there's the scene with her earring. She has the earring in.
Yep.
She finds this medicine bottle, opens it up, and her earring's in there, and her earring's not in her ear again.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I can.
And he had other earrings in there as well.
The whole kind of like the trophy shelf with all the different things. There's the locket with the hair in it, and was it the one that said like Emily or something on it, and a bunch of other things.
Right. So the implication there is that he takes, souvenirs from his victims. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I think that was his first victim. I was also going to say, when they finally show us the flashback of him in the car in the rain, and the girl finally makes it to the window, that was her.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, or at least it looked a lot like her to me.
It looked like her to me.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that was her. And then he mentions when he's trying to remember, because he said, I don't remember her face. And he's telling her, when she's tied up at the end, he's like, I picked this girl up X number of years ago. She asked me for a ride. Essentially, I brought her back here and killed her. And it turns out to be her, in his mind, kind of haunting him or whatever. So I really liked it. And I like that it's kind of a brain teaser as well. And that it has multiple kind of ways to like look at it. I thought it was a perfect length. I mean, if this movie had gone on for like 2 hours, it would have been way too much, because it was so like,
it's 90
dialogue driven,
90 some minutes. And so it's perfect. You get in, get what you need. Here's your finale, and boom, you're out.
Yeah, I dig it, man.
I think any longer it would have gotten to a point where I'm just like, all right, we get it.
I will say too, before we wrap up, this one included, 2024 is shaping up to be much better for horror, I think, than 23 was.
It's been a pretty good year for horror.
It really has. I mean, 23 was kind of lackluster, but it's a good year for horror if I rated a spider movie highly, which I did.
Any lasting thoughts on You'll Never Find Me?
Why is it called You'll Never Find Me? I never figured that part out. Do you have a theory?
She hides in one thing. She goes into the bathroom, but she gets found pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be a little more metaphorically, but yeah, sure. You'll Never Find Me. I was thinking about that too. I'm like, why is it called that? I didn't know if that was supposed to help me figure it out or what, but I don't know. I guess that's just kind of maybe what his character is saying, because he kind of disappeared out there into the trailer park in the woods, and he thinks he'll be able to do it forever, I guess. I don't know.
That scene where he's standing out in the rain with the hat and the coat and the rain's falling on him when she's finding out everything in the house, and he's just standing there as the wind's whipping. And it's like, this movie is just
it's so good.
Crafted so well. I think that's another thing, because if it's done well like that, and it just like draws you visually in, I'm just hooked. My eyes are on it, and I'm just watching.
Yeah, it really does depend on the production value and the performances. I mean, heavily weighted in that stuff, and it did really well in all those categories. So,
especially two people, one location, they better be good.
High recommend for me.
Same for me. All right, well, those are our thoughts on You'll Never Find Me. Before we move out, is there, besides watching You'll Never Find Me on Shudder, which absolutely, if you have Shudder, you need to go watch this. Anything else you want to recommend for people to watch at home?
At home?
Go to the theater and see, like, your Spider movie or whatever.
I mean, I just saw Immaculate yesterday, and that freaking blew me away. That's one of my favorite movies of the year.
I really want to see that one. That one's high on my list to see.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Late Night with the Devil will be coming out on Shudder this month. I don't know the date, but it comes out in April on Shudder.
It'll be out April 19th, and that one's at the top of my list for the year right now.
Definitely give that one a watch. Lisa Frankenstein just dropped on Peacock, which is another movie I love this year. One. Yeah, so I mean, I know you like to try to stick pretty much to horror, but there's a little kind of indie drama that's streaming on Hulu that's still in my top 5 of the year, but it's called Suncoast. It stars Woody Harrelson and Laura Linney, and it's just like a coming of age drama about this young girl who her brother has cancer and is in a coma. She's a high school girl, so she's dealing with being there for her brother kind of at the end of his life, but also trying to be a popular teenager and go to prom. And so she's just a character that's just going through a lot. And Woody Harrelson's like somebody that befriends her, and then Laura Linney plays her kind of like overbearing mother. But it's called Suncoast, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's just this little indie movie that nobody's heard about, so it's on Hulu right now.
Well, mine is on Tubi. This will shock you.
No.
It's one I watched yesterday. It's called The Rain Killer. It's more of a mystery thriller, kind of almost like a De Palma mixed with Giallo kind of mystery of this person who kills women, but only when it's raining. It came out in 1990. It was a pretty interesting movie, and I really did enjoy it.
I like the concept.
Yeah, it was fun. Well, that will do it for another chapter of Old Man Brad. Just make sure you subscribe to the show, and you'll never miss a chapter. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. Just snuggle up in that blanket, turn off the lights, because it's okay to be scared. We'll talk to you later, everybody.